Hi everyone, Zach here, and please watch this intro fully. Don't skip ahead, I do have a couple of important things to say here. That said, welcome to lesson 44 of the series on developing a survival game. In this video, we'll be importing our landscape foliage assets. So don't open your project, go to the Epic Launcher first. So despite what I say at the end, remember, go to the Epic Launcher, because that's where we'll be starting. And second, no, your engine is not frozen. Your computer is not frozen. Go have a cup of coffee. Go make dinner. I am not joking when I say go make dinner, because at one point during this, I paused the recording. And I pause it for about 30 minutes before I go and make dinner and come back and start eating my dinner before the engine finishes doing what it needs to do. So this is going to be a short video, in quotes, as compared to what we're actually doing. There's going to be a lot of pausing and waiting with today's video, and that's due to the assets, the free assets, that we are using as provided by Epic. That said, this series has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors, and all of that said, don't fire up your project, but open the Epic Launcher, and let's make a start. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Epic Launcher. In today's video, we're going to get some free assets to bring over to our environment so we can do our foliage. So go from the Epic Launcher to the Marketplace under the Unreal Engine, of course. And you can see that I'm recording this during a sale. Also, really quickly, make sure to get your free items for the month. Even if you don't plan on using them for anything, you don't know what's going to be useful down the road. I'm not joking. I can actually see using some of these sound packs down the road. All right. So what we're going to do is search for the Open World Demo Collection, otherwise known as the Kite Collection. If you don't have it, go ahead and get it. It is free. And we're going to add this to a project. And I'm going to search for my survival tutorial. And I'm just going to go ahead and add it to our project. This will take a bit, so I'm going to pause the recording here while it does its lovely little thing. Actually, before I pause the recording, I want to point out something in this section. If you try to open this project, this can take a very, very, very long time to open. I am running on a 3070 right now, and it takes me ages to open this project. It's going to finish by the time I'm done with this rant. Some of these things, like the trees, let's already add to the project, will take ages to open. Anyway, with that said, go ahead and open your project. I'm not going to make you watch me do it. If you don't feel like deleting everything, or if you like leaving them in the folders, probably should have said this earlier on, feel free to skip to the next part of the video. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the editor. I so am used to saying that when I start a recording or unpause a recording, and I'm in the editor. So as you can see, we now have 3 folders. We have the Kite Demo, which is the open world, our starter content, which I'm pretty sure we're actually done with now, and our actual folder. By the end of this video, we'll have 2 folders. The Kite Demo will be gone. So that's it. We're going to start in our survival folder. What we're going to do is we are going to go into our materials, and we are going to create a new material folder called Foliage. In fact, actually, I'm just going to create all the ones I know I'm going to have. I'm going to create one called Cliff as well, just in case we decide to use the Cliff materials. I never planned to, but yeah. We're going to do the same in our textures folder. So go back to textures. And in here, we have a new folder that we're going to call Cliff. If I can spell Cliff right. And you know what? I skipped something we're going to do with the foliage. We're actually going to have a few subfolders in foliage. So let's go ahead and make those subfolders. We're going to have one called bushes, one called flowers, one called grass, one called leaves, one called rocks, and finally one called trees. Now again, the trees take ages to open the first time. So just as a fair warning, your your engine isn't frozen. Go back to your meshes, sorry, not your meshes, your materials. Go into foliage and let's create those subfolders as well of bushes, flowers, grass. Should be grasses technically if I'm speaking for the plurals. I'm doing leaves. Actually, we really only have one grass type. Rocks and trees. Next, we're going to go to meshes, and I'll give you a guess what we're going to create there. The same exact folder structure. So now meshes, we're going to do cliff. We're going to do foliage. And in foliage, we'll have our bushes, flowers, F2 by the way, if you don't remember how to do that, if you click off by mistake, grass, or you can right click it, leaves, rocks, and finally trees. Now to make our life easier, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Window, we're going to open Content Browser 2. Content Browser 2, we'll just do this in the order in which they show up, will be our materials. So we'll stay in materials here. Let's do another Content Browser 3. And again, I'm going to leave the folder structure open actually. Go into Survival Game, I'll be Meshes. And then finally, Content Browser 4, 1 is the one at the very bottom of the screen by the way, will be our textures. All right, with that done, what we're going to do in Content Browser 1 is go to the Kite Demo. We have all these things. We have textures, materials, level content, maps, environments. I'm going to tell you a lot of this stuff, are parts that we will be taking. So you can see that stuff's in there that we're going to be taking. Level content, we actually don't need. We can ignore level content. Maps, we can ignore. Materials, we will, of course, need. So what we're going to do is let's pop open this materials for a moment. So these materials we do need. They will be our base materials for our foliage system. I do think Cliff also uses some of them, but we're going to just put them into the foliage folder for our materials. Now this is going to take a moment. Sorry, let me move them because it has to compile the shaders. So while this is going, I'm going to pause the video. All right, with that copied over, begins the long and arduous process of copying everything else over. So I'm going to show you a trick to do this. We're going to go into our foliage here, and we will start with our grass. And what we'll do for our grass is not go into the subfolder. We're going to go and select our materials. And there is our grass material, and we can just bring that into there. And we're going to turn off materials now. We'll switch over to texture, and there is our grass texture. That's meshes I'm in. And we'll bring the textures over to our grass folder. And then again, we'll turn off our textures and do our meshes. And there's our static mesh for our grass. It would be helpful if I had the right folders open. So go ahead and repeat this process for all of them. Now the bushes, just to be very clear on this, I would recommend doing last. I would say do everything else first. And the reason for that is once you've taken care of the flowers, for example, you can do them all in one go. We're not going to have subfolders for them. We're just going to do material. They're all of our flower materials. And we can just move that into flower. And you can repeat that process for the leaves as well, along with the textures and the meshes for all of that. And at the end, because we're doing it this way, textures I just did, right? No, it's materials. We can then very simply go in and move our bushes in one go without going into the subfolders. So I'm gonna just walk through all the other ones first, I guess. Turn off that, turn back on to our static meshes. By the way, if you notice I'm slightly stuttering, did I just move the flower mesh? If you notice I'm slightly stuttering as I do this, it's because I have an engine glitch right now. Or not an engine glitch, I have a computer glitch. I can't see the menus. I have to use OBS to actually see what menus I'm looking at. So yeah, if you make mistakes like that, just go quickly fix them, and then we can go back to, I think I just lost that folder. That was foliage. sorry, it was meshes, foliage, and I'll have to recreate my flower folder. And I can move my static meshes into there. And I'll do the leaves with you as well, just so you can see it being done. Go back up to foliage, go to leaves. Since we already have static meshes on, I'll just take care of the static meshes for leaves right away. Sorry, again, I had to remember to look over at the other screen to see OBS. And you know what? Because I know red is textures, I'm just going to very quickly do it that way. So this is textures, this is leaves. Sorry, again, that moment of having to look over. And then our final one, which is the materials, goes there. And if you've done everything correctly, if we were to open up any one of these folders, ooh, I haven't finished the flowers. Like I thought I did. What did I did the leaves really quickly. Okay, so static meshes we did. Textures we've done. Is it materials we have left over for the flower? What is going on? Sorry, for materials for flowers, make sure to do the materials and down here, and you can see it's all material instances. Sorry, material instances aren't caught by the by materials. So glad I'm doing this with you to show you that sort of error. But once those are done, we're gonna reset our filters and just go through each folder and make sure that they're empty. Oh, there are grass instances that I missed. I thought there was more for the materials for grass. And we'll do the same for our leaves, make sure we didn't miss anything. And it looks like all those folders are empty. So what we'll do is we will fix up our redirectors. Actually, I'll just go to the top layer here and fix up redirectors. Where is that? Sorry. Trying to do this again from here is a bit tricky. Fix up redirectors in folder. Let that go through. And when it's done, we can delete the folders. By the way, this is going to take forever, so get yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, have dinner, cook dinner, whatever. It's going to be a bit. So when I said go make dinner, I actually went and made dinner, and it was still 30 minutes after I had said that I went to make dinner. It only started, came back after that, and that took ages. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how much that takes to do. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and delete these folders. And again, I'm still having to use OBS to see where these things are. So it's going to take me just a moment or two longer than usual. All right. Now we have our bushes and ferns left. We can do this all in one go. I'm going to select my materials and textures. All right. Anything that is green is a material, including our instances. Anything that is red underneath the picture is a texture. So that makes my life a little bit easier. There we go. We're moving our materials over. All right. With that done, let's do the same for our textures. And with that done, let's do the same for our meshes. This is really hard to do, by the way, without being able to see anything. So we have static meshes, and there we go. We're going to move all those into our bushes. And with that done, we've taken care of our folder. Now, we're going to have to actually go back and clean some of this up. But again, fix up redirectors. And again, that's going to take a bit of time. So go ahead and, well, let that run through its thing. All right, with that done, let's delete our foliage out. And repeat the same process for the cliff. And I'm going to let you do that. We'll also go through, see if there's any other material in there that you want. All right, with the cliff done, go ahead and fix up redirectors for the cliff folder. And when that's done, go ahead and delete said cliff folder. So, there we go. Now you have the funness of, we have to copy over everything but the water texture to our textures foliage folder. And we'll talk about what we're going to do with the water in just a moment once you've copied this over. In fact, actually, we will do one more thing first, then we'll talk about the water. So go ahead and copy this over. Ignore the water for now. Or what you can do, actually, let's see if we can do that now, is we can go ahead and delete this. It's going to say there's references to this. What we're going to do is find our T water N and just hover over this, make sure that it's the one in our survival game, water, textures water, and we're going to replace reference. Yes, we want to replace and then permanently delete this version of it. That saves us the having to go through each of the materials and do that by hand. Let that go through, save everything, and let it do its thing. It's deleted. We can now fix up redirectors in this folder and delete it as well. All right, now the next bit we have to do is, of course, our rocks and trees. I'm going to let you do that on your own. You can choose if you want to copy over any of the ground tiles. That is completely up to you. But we do need our rocks and our trees, so at least do those. Really quickly, right before you do the trees, these will take ages. The Scots Pine in particular, for some reason, takes ages to load, like 45 plus minutes. I'm actually surprised how long it took me to fix up redirectors earlier. Normally that's like a minute or two. The trees are normally the long one, just as a heads up. And we'll have another video in this section where when we actually play with the trees and add things to them, again, it will be take a break. All right, the last little bit are these two cliff textures located in the Kite Demo textures folder. So we're just gonna put them into the cliff folder there and go ahead and move them. And when that's done, go ahead and fix up redirectors for the Kite Demo all in, and we can start deleting stuff if you've got everything you need. And now to make sure that we are deleting things properly, that we got everything we need, I'm gonna delete the maps first because they should have no references anywhere else. So we'll delete those. By the way, if you do open that showcase map, expect to be sitting there for quite some time. We'll do the materials, textures, and then we're going to do each subfolder. So these might have references elsewhere. I'm not so worried about them. I know we don't need them. Yeah. I'm going to force delete. Going to take a moment. There we go. Let's go look at our blueprints. Open our assets. I don't think we need any of this. If you want to use our skybox instead, go for it. But let's go ahead and delete this blueprint folder. Just make sure nothing is being referenced. There are references in memory, but that is not something we're going to worry about. And with that gone, we'll go on to our architecture folder and do the same there, but we'll probably do it just from the level content instead. All right, so let's go up to our architecture folder. Don't think anything in here we actually use. When I say that, I know we don't use any of that that's in there. Of course, if we do mess something up, we can always just re-import the Kite Demo and grab what we need. Make sure to go through each of these folders, make sure they're all empty, and then we can delete the tree folder. And I do recommend doing this one at a time, just to be on the safe side. Same rule here, go through each of these, make sure that they're all actually empty, and then delete it. And then the last bit, unless you've taken things from here, I don't plan on using any of these materials, so we should be fine to delete this. If you want to use any of it in place of what we currently have, go for it. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that though. And this is what I'm really nervous about, that there are textures in here that are being used elsewhere, and then we have to check those carefully if there are. So our photo scan displacement is referencing one of them. So what we're going to do is we are going to just close that out, go to our photo scan master here, and I am going to close these extra content browsers, and I'm going to take a look at what's in here that it might be referencing. So we have this flat and normal, and that's coming from our engine material, so I'm not so concerned about that. We have our cliff rocks, which is in our survival game, so I'm not worried about that one. We have the cliff rock 3D, which is, or 03, which is also in our survival game. We have this tint color, which is just a color, and we have this black texture, which is coming from the engine. I'm not sure what's being referenced here, so I'm going to be a bit cautious and just go through each of these one at a time. So we'll start with this last folder here and work our way forwards. So assets that are pending deletion. Some assets are being deleted or still referenced in memory. So let's pop open this real quick. This is a material instance. Its parent is the photo scan. So that's where we're getting all this from. Also, I had the wrong photo scan open. So it's good we've done this. Let's go to here. It's this rocky path. Good thing we actually started in that one, because that's where the file is. We need to take this one and move this into our textures folder. And I'm going to put it in our foliage folder. Sorry, I can't see the menu, so I forgot to look at OBS there. And then I'm going to come back here, fix up redirectors real quick, and go back to our photo scan material. Make sure there's nothing else in here that we might be using. We've already checked these textures, why I'm not actually doing anything with them. All right, with that done, let's go ahead and start deleting these. And you can see that we're fine. We have memory and references and memory, but that shouldn't affect us. I knew there was one texture floating around somewhere. All right, I believe now we can go ahead and delete all the ground tiles. It just pure happenstance that it was the last file, and that's one I picked, or folder, and that was the last one I picked. So that wasn't me remembering, oh yeah, there was that one in there. I just knew that one of these I thought we had to get, and we can go ahead and delete all of this. Now, one thing I want to do real quick is find the photoscan materials in our primary folder for our materials. Go to foliage, and we have the photoscan displacement. Make sure that nothing in here is broken. We're still getting displacement, which is good to see. We still have the photoscan master, which is good to see. So it looks like everything is properly squared away. This bit nearest that wasn't actually loading in. So with that done, let's go Control S, save everything. And I'm gonna hit save all just to be on the safe side. Okay, now we can get on to the meat of today's show. Actually, one thing, before proceeding, I want you to restart your engine, restart the project. That should clean up some issues that are occurring in the background, by the way. All right, it's been about 2 hours between me saying restart the engine and coming back. Well, my Patreon supporters who have access to my GitHub are going to see some really interesting things. There are some files that you can't commit, by the way, if you're using any sort of repository. Neither of these can be committed. They're each too large for GitHub. And, yeah, a good chunk of these rocks, I can only get 5 of them. The rest are just, well, they're 8K textures. That tells you how big they are. So they're going to eat up a lot of space. Now, I'm getting another error where I'm over my pool limit, and that's because I've been loading in textures to test them to see what was going on. I'm going to restart the engine one more time, and then we'll get started again. And 30 seconds later, I'm back in the engine, and we will probably get a texture over budget thing, streaming budget, but we'll take care of that down the road. And we'll talk about what that means. In fact, actually, the streaming budget is relatively small, so we are going to increase it permanently and properly in our configuration, but we'll do that about halfway through this subsection. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna create a foliage material for our grass. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to our materials, we're gonna go to ground, we're gonna go to grass, right click in this folder and go to, oh, sorry, it's actually in foliage now. Sorry, I'm used to it being in miscellaneous. In 4.22, it's under miscellaneous. In 4.23, it's under foliage. And we want landscape grass type. And we're just gonna name this LGT grass. All right, go ahead and open that up. Bring it into the correct window if you had my issue. And we get an array that's empty. Let's add our first element, and this is a structure with 18 members. Let's open this up, and we have a whole bunch of settings to go through. So before we go further forward, just really quickly, what is a landscape grass type? What is this thing we've just created? Well, it's a way for us to spawn static meshes, keyword there, static meshes, on our map or on our level where we want to have it spawn. Now there are some limits to that. But what do I mean where we want it to spawn? And what I mean by this is, in particular, we are spawning it on certain materials. We have to say what material it's going to spawn on. So we'll be taking care of that in just a moment after we set this up. But we are limited in that. We don't have the full range of options that we can get with other parts of our foliage editor. And we'll explore that a little bit more as we get into doing our trees. But we're going to worry about our grass for now. So right now I'm going to go into our static mesh, and I'm going to search for SM grass, or I think it's field grass, and there we go. I am now going to spawn in some field grass. Our density is, I believe it's how many per 10 square meters, we'll say 100. So it's how many instances we want per 10 square meters. For now, let's leave this at 400. So we have this grid, and we're gonna actually not use this, but what a grid does is it makes, based on our jitter below, makes a row of the static meshes. So if you're doing a field, like if you're doing a crop field, then yeah, you wanna use grid. But if we want something natural, we're gonna turn that off. Actually, we can have it be natural by lowering that value, but we're just gonna set that to just be off for now. Our call distance is when it starts calling out of existence. So when we start moving away, when does it start fading from our view? And right now we're gonna leave this as is. If we wanna change this, we'll change it in a later section because we actually have to update the material for our call to work. We're also gonna leave our min load to -1. Now we might get a lighting error. If we do get a lighting error, I'll show you how to resolve that down the road as well in this section. Next we have this scaling, and we have uniform right now, which says that everything will change at the same rate. We also have free, which means that all of these are independent, so X can change, Y can change, and Z can change. And then we have lock X and Y, which means that the X and Y will change together. So if this is, say, 0.5 to 1.5, and this is 0.5 to 1.5, and it picks 0.75, all of our X and Y will be 0.75, but our Z, it goes up to 2, can go anywhere between 1 and 2. Now, what we are going to do for our field grass is leave this on free, but we are going, it doesn't really matter, we can actually have it at lock X and Y, because we're going to leave these two at 1 to 1, and our minimum will be 0.15, so we get really short grass, to 2.5, really tall grass. Now, random rotation will allow, that literally does what it says. Align to surface, we will allow. I'm going to show you what this one does. I'm not going to explain it. I'm going to show it to you though in a moment. We do not want to use landscape light map. As for our lighting channels here, what we're going to worry about is none of that. We're just going to leave the lighting channels as is, where we'll talk about those down the road. For receive decals, well, this is if it's going to receive a decal, and let's be fair, nope, it's not going to receive a decal. And do we want it to cast shadows? No, we do not want our grass to cast shadows. Oh dear God, that will be an engine killer if you do that. Go ahead and save it, and look, nothing's happened. So the next step of this is to actually spawn the grass material onto our map. Now, this is why I brought up the fact that we're going to have a second landscape grass type in here. There are a few ways to approach an error. Now, I'm going to show you what I want to do first, which is I want to do a landscape grass output. So right click in your landscape material, search for landscape grass output, and here we are. This is the output. It's similar to that node up there. So I'm just going to move it to that side of my grid line. And what we're going to do is we need to do a sample. Oh, sorry, actually, before we go farther forward, what we need to do is actually declare what we're spawning. So we're going to open this up. We have one element with nothing in it so far. So we need to actually insert something in here, which is, if I can open that up, we need to insert our landscape grass. So this is what we want to spawn. The name here, grass, doesn't matter. I can name this blue, and it's not going to matter. But the name that does matter is the name that goes into that input pen. I'm going to put it back to grass. So I am going to search for a material landscape layer, which is our sample. Material landscape. Sorry, I always have a trouble finding these ones. What we're searching for is landscape sample. So pull off of there, landscape sample. That's what we're looking for. Now here we have the name none. This name matters. This name has to match the layer that we want to spawn our grass onto. And we're going to spawn it onto our grass layer. So the name has to match perfectly. So there we are. If I hit apply, and I could hit save too, I guess, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. This should, if we go back to our map once the shaders are done compiling, so I'm going to pause the recording while the shaders do their thing. All right, so now that we've done that and the shaders are done compiling, we go here, we have grass. Now, you're going to notice right away, we have some issues. Grass is showing up in some really weird spots. In fact, actually, I think there are some under the water, which actually threw me for a loop because I removed all instances of grass outside of a particular area on the thing. Now, what we could do is we could go through and we could go to paint. We can go to our rock layer and start getting rid of the grass this way. And that takes a bit of effort. So now, one thing I want to point out to you on this is that we can't control the slope or angle at which, or altitude or depth at which the material or the static mesh can spawn. So there's that problem. There's a problem of it spawning in the wrong spot. Now, before we take care of those two problems, or the spawning in the wrong spot, I want to show you really quickly what a line to surface does. I'm just going to turn that off. And there you go. It's just sticking up vertically, which looks really weird. If we only had a flat surface, then that's fine. But we have sloped and angled surfaces. So we're going to align to our surface. Sorry, I couldn't think of what the word was. I was going to say material. Now, there are a couple of ways to handle this. Let's say we want the grass texture to seep down a bit. One thing we could do is add in a new layer. And this layer could be called, say, let me just open this up. Could be called grass, no foliage. And this will be a height blend layer. And we can plug our grass layer into there. And then paint on our map on the edges, or anywhere where there is grass, that layer. Now, I don't like that option. So if you do that, though, you just plug that into there, go to your material instance, reload the map, by the way, so it shows up there, give it a new landscape layer info, and paint where you want it. I don't like that option. I really, really don't. So I'm going to delete this last layer I've created. There we go. Actually, I'm just going to Control Z my way back, because there we go. So what can we do instead? And I think the more elegant solution is we go through and we subtract from here. So we're going to break that for a moment. And we're going to subtract. So what are we going to subtract from this? Well, I want to subtract where there is rock. So I'm going to duplicate this. And the layer name matters again, so I need to make sure it matches what's up there. And I'm going to name this rock. And I'm going to plug that into there. I am going to apply, and then I'm going to pause while the shaders do their thing, and I'm going to show you the result. All right, so with the shaders done compiling, if we go back to our map, you can see the grass is vanishing out. We've gotten rid of it from a lot of the weird spots. There are some spots like there where it's still showing up. And they're still showing up a little bit strongly in some of the areas around the stone, or in other areas like here. I am actually just going to want to remove it that way. So you're still going to have to go through and clean it up a bit. But there are a couple of other things we can do. Like, well, again, I'm going to clean this bit up because I don't like it there. We can intensify how much we're removing. So we can do a multiply node. And with this multiply node, all I could do is say, raise this value, set it by 1. We can raise it by 150%, so 1.5, and plug that into there. There we go. And if we apply now, again, allow the shaders to do their thing. Okay, with that done, we should see a little bit of a change here, not too much. And in some areas, we're just going to come through and, again, just change the grass out a little bit so that we can have a little bit more of a natural look. Again, you're going to need to go through this on your own and kind of work out where you want to make these changes. So throughout this video, throughout the series, you will see me come through and make changes to the material, or you'll see changes between videos. That's because I will be going through between videos and, again, making changes as I see fit to make this look a little bit better. Again, these are all optional on where you do these. It's up to you. Now, the next thing we need to take care of is adding a little bit more to our landscape. So we're going to just go back to our landscape grass material here, and I'm just going to put this over to the side like usual. I am, however, going to pull back a bit so we can see the island and see what we're going to do. Now, the first thing I'm going to do after I realign this is I am going to increase our grass count to about 500. There we go, that's a little bit better. I don't like how the grass itself, the material looks. As I said, it's saturated. So I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna make it a bit darker. So to do that, I'm gonna go to my textures. I'm gonna go to my ground textures, grass, find my diffuse. I'm gonna just pin that in there for a moment. And I'm actually gonna move this off screen for a moment so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to, because I've worked through the values already, and again, I'm going to thank Linda She for her help here. I'm going to change my color here, and I'm going to change my color to a 0.025187 by 0.038204. So we're getting a darker green already by 0.008. 568. Yeah, I could have done the hex linear codes, I realize. So we're getting a darker green. In fact, actually, I'm going to just double check the hex linear code. There is the code I want to use. And it looks like it is. Yeah, it is. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to change the brightness. So I'm going to darken it up a bit. So we've added a general sort of padding color to it. I'm going to just darken it to 0.3 there. I'm going to change my saturation to 0.8, and then I'm going to save this. So we have a little bit of a darker image. If we come back to our map now, our grass is a bit darker underneath. So the dirt and grass just feel like they fit a bit better into our material. Again, we're going to have some cleanup to do probably around that fade distance, but we'll talk about that down the road. So you can tell I'm already coming in to look at spots to do my cleanup in. Alright, so you're going to want to come through and, as I said, do changes there. Now, the other thing we want to do is we want to add in a little bit more variety to our landscape here. So, again, I'm going to just turn the camera around so we can see a bit better. And I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to add in another element to our landscape grass type. In fact, we're going to have two more by the time we're done. So the first one, there we go. It's going to reload everything as we go through. I'm going to add in SM Fern 01. And when this loads in, oh dear God, we have fields and fields of ferns. This is not what we want. I feel like making a particular weirdly timed joke here about this, but no, this is definitely not what we want. So we need to change the grass density. We need to go really low, like, say, 10. There we go. Now we have ferns of all the same size all over the island, and they're also in lines. They really are. They're a bit hard to see due to the way the material is broken up, but they are, I mean, if I change the jitter, maybe that will make it stand out a bit more. Actually, higher jitter makes it more natural. Lower jitter puts them in straight lines, so now they're in straight lines. Sorry about that, I was mistaken on the direction of jitter. But we're going to turn off our grid pattern just to make this work a bit better. Next, we're going to leave these two as is. We're going to do lock X and Y. Trust me, you want to lock X and Y on this one. It gets weird if you don't. Like, they look really messed up. We'll do 0.5 to 1, 2.5 to 1, and 0.05 to 1. We will use random rotation, yes, align to surface, and no on these 2 points. And while that's rebuilding, we can see now that the ferns have come in. We're going to add in our other fern. So layer number 3 or 2, if you're actually counting or reading the number off the screen, but really is our third layer, is going to be SM Fern 02. And again, we're going to get Hash Island, as I like to call it, even though they don't look like weed plants whatsoever, but I still like calling it Hash Island. We're going to lower the density on this one to 5. Again, get rid of our jitter or our grid. Leave all these as is. Change lock X, Y. This one will be 0.1 to 1, 0.1 to 1, and then it's 1 to 1 for this one with random rotation aligned to surface. And we're going to have decals or cast shadows. And again, we have a bit more variety in our vegetation now. And then finally, our last fern set. And again, we will get that weirdness of just having an over-the-top amount of ferns. So open that up, and this is going to be SM Fern 03. And I'm just going to let it do its thing because it's, yeah. So these ones, by the way, are bigger. They're slightly different shaped. That's the differences between them. We're going to go to 2.5 on this one. We're going to get rid of the grid. Call is as is. Lock our X and Y. And it's 0.01 to 0.8. 0.01 to 0.8. And 0.01 to 0.8. Again, we will have random rotation aligned to surface. And these two will be marked as false. All right, it's going to take a moment for all that to load in. While it does, I'm just going to save everything and close that window. All right, so we now have our landscape grass. Now, really quickly, I'm going to build lighting. I'm going to pause the recording for this just to see if the error that I mentioned earlier does indeed come up. All right, that's the error I was talking about. And the solution to this is really quick to do. We're going to just make this a little bit easier on ourselves. Go back to our materials, go to ground, go to grass, open up our landscape, open up our LGT, landscape grass type, and we're going to go through each of these one at a time. Just find the static mesh, open it up, go to your LOD group, and change it to foliage. You'll get an error. Feel free to read through it, but trust me, hit yes on that. And then we'll do the same for all the other ones. In fact, we don't need to hunt the other ones down because they're all in that folder. So again, foliage, hit yes. Go back here, foliage, hit yes. I swear I saved the last file, but I noticed when I was in the other window I hadn't. And then finally, foliage. You can also see the difference in our ferns as we do this. So those are our different fern types. All right, again, I'm gonna do my build lighting, but I am gonna pause again and do this off screen. All right, so we have the importance volume error, which is to be expected. It's going to take a moment for the material to load in, but there we are. We now have our material loaded in, and we have the start of our island. Again, you're going to want to come through and do some cleanup as you see fit. And as I do my cleanup, I'm going to do my outro. So remember, this series has been brought to you by Patreon sponsors like Connor, Rian, Galwa, Quadmenson, Hanas, and 1 Vault 10. If you've enjoyed this series, if you enjoyed setting up your landscape and you like how it's turning out, make sure to hit that subscribe or that like button down below. It really does help this channel out. And if you want to help this channel out further, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. In the next video, we'll start taking care of some of our foliage spawning and our procedural foliage spawning in particular, with relation to our herbs that we'll be adding in and all that fun stuff that goes with that. And if you want to be here for that, make sure to hit the subscribe and notify icon. All of that said, I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.